Stay tuned for Butler on Business, coming up next on the Liberty Express.
Welcome back to Butler on Business. My name is Jason Riddle in the studio with Alan Butler. Last segment we heard from Peter Schiff. But one of the things that really ties this all together, that ties us back together, if you're upset about out-of-control government spending, if you're upset about these out-of-control government deficits, our Federal Reserve System is really the central engine that makes that possible. They monetize the federal government's debt, and they inflate our money supply, and they pay for all these programs through this tax we call inflation. Now, what would be able to curtail or at least put some restraint on these central banks' authority would be some type of gold standard. And now we have on the phone with us Ralph Benko, who is an expert on the gold standard. He's the editor of Gold Standard Now and co-author of The 21st Gold Standard for Prosperity, Security, and Liberty. And he's going to be talking to us today about the gold standard.
Ralph, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much for having me on.
And you served in the Reagan White House.
I was a very, very, very junior official, just as junior as you can be and still honestly call yourself an official for President Reagan. It was a great honor.
Did you know our buddy Peter Ferrara in the Reagan White House?
Of course, everybody knew Peter Ferrara. Knew and loved.
Well, I like Peter.
A brilliant young man back then, a brilliant old man like me now.
Well, I know Peter's age. He's not that old, so I know you're not that old. Hey, old is a relative term.
Well, anyway, thank you for inviting me on to talk about the gold standard. The website's name is thegoldstandardnow.org for people who want to drill down a little deeper. It's a publication of the Lehrman Institute.
It is frustrating for me to hear everybody talk about how Nixon took us off the gold standard. Now, I'm always quick to point out, no, he took the rest of the world off the gold standard. It was FDR that took us off the gold standard. But I think most people think gold is still backing the U.S. dollar. They don't realize that what we call dollars is just circulating U.S. debt.
Yeah, well, they're Federal Reserve notes that are not legally convertible into anything. Well, let me change that. They're legally convertible at the bank into 4 quarters or 10 dimes. But since quarters and dimes are made out of base metal, that's quite a debasement from the days when you could walk into a bank and get a silver dollar for your dollar bill, or at my father's day, walk into a bank and get a $20 gold 1-ounce gold piece for your $20 bill.
Last week, I had to endure Dick Morris, first of all, laughing at Ron Paul, and then Dick Morris explaining that we could never go back to the gold standard because there's just not enough gold out there.
Well, Dick doesn't understand. There are a lot of people who are prey to this fallacy. They don't understand that the gold standard is a quality rule, not a quantity rule. So they get very confused. This has the same level of sophistication as if he said, darn it, we should not let the Bureau of Weights and Measures define the length of the dollar as the length of a foot is 12 inches, because you know what? There just aren't enough inches in the world.
Well, I think that's an appropriate analogy, yeah.
Right. We're not going to run out of inches by keeping the foot defined to 12 inches. We're not going to end up with a deficit of rulers. It's a definitional thing. It's not a quantity thing. The Bank of England used to run the gold standard when they were in charge of the world's monetary system with about 5% of as much gold as they had currency in circulation. So that's not a problem.
Ralph, to stay with that analogy of the ruler, I would say it would be very difficult to measure the lengths of distances if the length of an inch were to be changing constantly. Would you say that holds true in the economic world, that it's difficult to calculate economic calculations?
That's exactly right. If you had to look at the newspaper every day or your computer screen to find out, how the length of an inch had shifted in the last 5 minutes, imagine how that would destroy people's ability to order lumber for their buildings or cabinetry or, anything that required, any kind of precision or any kind of measuring the length or the weight of things. In the Constitution, the provision that allows Congress to regulate the value of money is in the same clause as the provision that gives them the right to establish a Bureau of Weights and Measures. This has to do with the integrity of our money, not the quantity of our money. We, the people, will determine how much. It's up to the money needs to be in circulation. We're very good at that. It's up to the government to maintain the quality of the money so that it does not vary in value except for very slowly and minor degrees that are self-correcting.
Okay, so restoring the gold standard, restoring real monetary integrity, what will that bring us? How will that help things?
Well, there are two schools of thought on this. We're complementary. I'm a conservative. They're also libertarians. So I'm going to talk about the conservative school of thought. We look at the empirical data, and according to the evidence, just the statistics going back through all of history, the gold standard is a recipe for creating millions of new jobs because you're creating these efficiencies in the system by getting rid of the fluctuation in the value of the currency. And by the way, when you talk about the floating exchange rates, it's really the sinking exchange rates. The dollar, Nixon, when he took the world off the gold standard, promised in his famous speech, which you can read on YouTube or at thegoldstandardnow.org, we've got it posted, that the dollar would keep its value. And you know what? The 2011 dollar is worth 18 cents in the 1971 dollar. So it's clearly a broken campaign promise. You know, Nixon lied, what can I say, or was badly misunderstood. So when the dollar continues to erode in value year after year, which, by the way, we experience as inflation, but it's not really prices going up, it's the purchasing power of the dollar going down. When that happens chronically, there's no way for you or your listeners to really save for their retirement. It's a wealth tax. To save for their children's education, to save for a rainy day, because, you know, you save, you're a sucker. Because all the money that you save starts going, it continually erodes in value. Maybe it's 2% a year, maybe it's 5% a year, maybe it's 10% a year. And all we know is that it keeps eroding at various different rates. That's terrible for people who are trying to work hard and save. And that's what you get jobs from. You get jobs from people working hard and saving and investing what they've managed to hold on to.
The Swiss currently have a referendum that they're going to be voting on, hopefully soon, to go to a Swiss gold franc.
Thomas Jacob is the head of the Gold Franc Association. I'm proud to call him a friend. And they are working with the largest political party in Switzerland called the SVP, the Swiss People's Party, to get through the Swiss legislature a referendum to vote for the creation of a parallel gold convertible franc on their ballot next year. And Thomas is off on honeymoon right now, so I don't have the very latest news about this, but he's getting worldwide attention, and good on you for having paid attention to this. This could be a major development.
Ralph, how do we go about getting such a movement here underway? I mean,
too late. We've already got one underway. It's just a matter of joining it, not starting it.
All right. Well, how do we join it?
Well, there are a number of groups at the lead of this, and I'm professionally associated both with American Principles Project and American Principles in Action. For your listeners who want to learn more about the gold standard and teach more about the gold standard, just go to thegoldstandardnow.org, which is a project of the Lehrman Institute. I'm the editor of that, and every week we have 3, 4, 5 new blogs talking about what's happening in the world with the gold standard and what it means to you. And what the gold standard is, you know, it doesn't mean you're going to be carrying around gold coins and paying with things with gold coins. That's silly.
Ralph, as a former member of the Reagan White House, I assume you stay frustrated with the current establishment Republican Party.
Oh, yeah.
All right, as I do.
Oh, yeah. I write a weekly column for Forbes.com as well. Anybody who wants to, I follow the presidential politics of this very closely. Ralph Benko, Benko, Forbes.com. Just Google me, and you can read your way back. If the Fed would do its job, which is keeping the value of the dollar pristine, the way the National Institute of Standards and Technology does its job, keeping the ounce at 1 ounce and the foot at 1 foot, I'd have no problem with the Fed. It's just their mission has gotten very garbled, and they've been told to, you know, create jobs and bail this out and bail that out. No, their job is just to keep the value of the dollar at exactly a defined weight of gold, and to let us go into the banks and trade in our dollars for gold, trade in our gold for dollars without charge. If they were to go back to their original mission, they wouldn't be a bad guy.
Well, unfortunately, even measuring the Fed on its own terms, they've been an abysmal failure. Ralph, we're going to have to leave it right there. We're running out of time. Again, we've been speaking with Ralph Benko, the editor of The Gold Standard Now. We're going to put up links, Ralph, to the goldstandardnow.org and Facebook and Twitter pages here after the break.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been a privilege to be here.
Ralph, we look forward to having you on again.
Thank you. I would love that.